While I appreciated when developers would try to innovate on the NES by experimenting with new mechanics or peripherals, thinking outside the box often just led to frustrating or needlessly complex gaming experiences. Looking at you, Rob, and Glove, and the thing you yell into. Yeah, looking at y'all. When it comes down to it, on the NES, just give me an action platformer, make it less grueling than Holy Diver, and slap some good tunes to it, and I'm probably going to love it. Natsume must have heard me say that when they made Shadow of the Ninja. Sure, I was only 5 at the time, but you wouldn't believe how often I was overheard asking my mom and dad for an action platformer with slapping tunes for Christmas. Interestingly, this game had a different title in each region. It was Blue Shadow in Europe, the Dark Operative Kage in Japan. Each had its own unique cover art, and the games even played slightly differently, with the European version being noticeably faster. So anyway, what's up with Shadow of the Ninja on the NES? The year is 2029 AD, which is just around the corner here in 2024, and the evil Emperor Garuda has built a stronghold in the middle of the largest city of the United States. Which city? The largest one. Whichever one is the largest in 2029. My money is on Topeka, Kansas. Look, you never know. The only thing that can stop Garuda and his evil reign and avenge all the lost lives during his campaign are ninjas. 2 specific ninjas, Lord Hayate and Lady Kaede. If you have a pal on hand, you two can play simultaneous co-op, which ratchets the fun factor of this game up several notches. But if you're rolling solo, don't worry. You'll still have a good time. You can choose whether to play as Hayate or Kaede, and it's just a sprite swap. They have the exact same abilities. There's not much to the game in terms of mechanics, B attacks, A jumps. You can jump and hang from platforms, and because I know you care, yes, you can attack from ladders and grip upper platforms and attack from them. I love when games let me attack from the ladder. That might be a fun video idea. Top 5 games where you can attack while on a ladder. Hold up, let me write that down. Anyway, your weapon selection is tiny. You have 3 options. Your katana, which has super short range, but the area of attack can be increased with pickups. Then there's the shuriken. They come in packs of 20, and unfortunately you'll use them up rather quickly as most enemies in the game require a handful of hits to defeat, so you'll burn through all 20 every few enemies. And then there's the sickle and chain weapon that can be launched outward as well as upward, has good reach, and doesn't run out like the shurikens. One thing I wish the game would let you do is cycle through weapons. You start with the sword, and can pick up other weapons by finding these item box things. So if you pick up shurikens, you're not technically adding them to your arsenal, you replace your sword with them. It would have been cool if you could pick up the shurikens and have the option of cycling back to your sword so that you could save the shurikens for certain enemies. You can also find bombs, and they have about as bad of range as the sword. Why can't you throw bombs? When you drop bombs in this game, it's like you literally dropped them. The game is broken into 5 levels, each with 4 stages, and the last 2 stages of each level have bosses. I didn't find the bosses to be too tough. Their patterns are rather predictable, and with the right weapon, you can spam them to death in short order. The stages themselves aren't too tough either, but do require a few attempts to learn the enemies and their patterns. Overall, I felt like the difficulty here and the stage design was pretty well done. Even though your weapons and attacks are basic, the enemy variety is nice. Each stage introduces a new environment and some new enemies to go with it. Plus, the game's music is outstanding. I did mention the game's hit detection, and while Shadow of the Ninja is well made top to bottom, that's the one thing that might frustrate you. Enemies can crowd you and not take damage if you're too close. There's also a limit to how low your ranged attacks can go, so there will be times that an attack is just millimeters from making contact with an enemy's head, and your attack won't count. Graphically, the game looks really good, on par with other, similar, Natsume-developed NES games like Shatterhand and Power Blade 2. Your character's movements are well animated. Each level's background looks alive with rotating cogs or gears or moving water. And while most of the levels take place in dark indoor settings, they do a good job of introducing color for each stage to keep it visually fresh. Shadow of the Ninja isn't an easy game, but it feels mostly fair and graduates the difficulty smoothly as you go. You have a life bar on the left, and you can take a good number of hits before it gets whittled down. But if you die, it's game over. You get 5 continues that start you back at the stage you're currently on, so that's reasonably forgiving, but all in all, it's a short game. Despite having 20 total stages, a few go by quick or are just bosses. A complete run of the game, if you're able to beat it, takes less than a half hour. So if this is one you're looking to beat, it'll take some practice, but is certainly within reason, even for the casual NES player. I definitely wouldn't put this on the level of some of the dastardly hard NES games out there. In all, I think this game is a strong recommendation for folks looking for an action platformer on the NES in the ilk of Vice Project Doom, Shatterhand, and Power Blade. And it might be a bit bland by comparison to those, however, the simultaneous co-op really feels like the developers took an opportunity to make a two-player Ninja Gaiden, and that really helps this one out. The basic mechanics and structure allow for this one to be a fun co-op experience for almost any two players, regardless of skill. There were no follow-ups, spin-offs, sequels, or even ports of this version of the game. It was originally intended to be ported to the Game Boy, but was rebranded last minute to become Ninja Gaiden Shadow. However, out of nowhere, a remake of the game is coming later in 2024, titled Shadow of the Ninja Reborn, and the original composer is back, which is awesome. Well, that's going to do it for Shadow of the Ninja on the NES. As always, shoot from the ladder, and thanks for watching.